Hey YouTube, if you garden and you grow tomatoes, you know that the occasional end of season situation is, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with the rest of these tomatoes? If you've already made salsa and you've already made spaghetti sauce and you've already canned tomatoes and you've made soup and you've eaten them fresh and you're just, I went out the other day to be like, I think I'll get one and see if we have some for dinner. And so ketchup, this is what we're going to be doing. You can make the best ketchup. Oh my goodness. I'm going to show you how to make the best ketchup in the world with stuff that you probably for sure have in your pantry right now. Let's check it out. The first thing you're going to need to do is get everything rinsed. And I'm not even kidding how good this stuff is. That you can eat it with a spoon, but you will want to put it on everything, and if you make enough, you can can it. The thing is, you will find that it takes a lot of tomatoes, and you're going to cook it down and down and down and down into ketchup you cook it down to as thick as you want, and I like ours pretty thick. Usually it'll take me the first day plus part of the second day to actually reduce it down far enough. But it is super easy once you get all the ingredients in, then you're just reducing it and waiting to test the flavor at the end and maybe make a little bit of adjustments. And you can customize this however you want. So if you want it more garlicky or if you want it less sweet or whatever, you can do whatever you want with this. But this is my basic recipe that I've come up with over the years, trying to find the best ketchup because I don't like to shop in the middle of the store. So, and what I'm going to do to start, I have a set recipe for, cups of tomatoes. So what I do is just start with your tomato, get it chopped, just roughly chop it, get rid of your, your core, chop it and just put it in basically a measuring thing like this. And once you see how much tomato you have, then you can decide how much of all of these ingredients you're going to be adding. And I'll show you what we're going to be adding. This is so easy. I have to excuse the mess in the background because I'm actually canning pears a little bit later today again. I did it all day yesterday. So we're going to start with chopped tomatoes. You can make some notes, but I will give the quantities of what I'm doing as we go through the recipe. I don't know that I'll put it in the description. You're going to be tomato, white wine vinegar, garlic powder, mustard powder, granulated, not mustard seed, black pepper, salt, of course, brown sugar. I use organic. Lemon juice, you can do organic, but that's obviously not. And we are for sure going to be adding some, sadly, yes, Caro syrup, which you could leave out. I do because it's not much, and I like the way that the flavor turns out in the end. So I'm going to start chopping, and I have a few cherry tomato sized ones we're also going to add in the mix, and we'll see how much we get measured out, and then we'll start adding all of these wonderful ingredients, and then it just cooks down. It's going to be that simple. So I'll see you back here in a minute. This is also a great place to use your cherry tomatoes and pear tomatoes, these little yellow beauties. If you grow these, you know that when they come on, you can't eat them fast enough. What in the world do you do with them? And I just pop the tops off and cut them in half so they can go right in the sauce and cook down. I don't take the skins off of these, but we are going to be putting it through a food mill at one point, so that'll take the skin part out. You don't need to dip them in boiling water and do any of that crazy hard stuff. So have a food mill or some way to press these through to get the skins off of them, but other than that, super easy. And what I also do is just have an old tub to put the junk, the junky bits in, and I'll take that out to the chickens. Or if you have pigs, they love this kind of stuff. So all of my kitchen scrappy things always just go out to the animals. And I have a compost bin, but I don't use it. That's a different topic. Moving on. So the junk goes in there, and these I'll literally just, I'm not going to do it in my hand, but just cut them in half. Like that. And that's all we need to do. And bigger ones, just same thing. It's just sort of roughly chopped. There's kind of like, not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to this. Just cut them just roughly just kind of get them broken up. And if there's any bruised areas or funny, like that one's got a little funny end, I'll cut that off. And just make sure you're getting rid of that stuff. But other than that, it's just roughly chop and put them right in there. And we're going to just move right through all of these and see how much I have. I think my recipe that I have that I've made up, the base recipe, is for, like 7 quarts of tomatoes, which is a good number to start with if you're canning. But you can do a small batch. I did one the other day, and I think I just filled this and cooked it down, and it made us a pint. Well, there you go. There's your math. It made a pint a pint. It made a pint plus some because we used a bunch of it on a dinner, and then I filled a full pint after that. So probably more like a pint and a half with a full. This is one of those 8-cup measuring, and I probably filled it, you know, like full. So it was probably more like 10 cups of tomatoes, and it cooked down to just a little more than a pint of ketchup. So I don't know what the conversion is there, but if you're mathy, I'm sure you can figure that out and just see, you know, how many cups of chopped tomatoes will make you how much sauce, and then how many do you want a can, and how much ketchup do you go through. Again, I'm a big fan of keeping all these records. And if you're like us and you like to preserve your food, that will see you through for the year. Not, you know, not like, oh yay, we got fresh vegetables and we're eating out of the garden. If you want to be sustainable basically and feed your family through until the next harvest, you need to know those numbers. You need to know how much ketchup are you going to go through. You know, if you don't want to go buy it again ever, you need to make quite a bit. And obviously if you have paste tomatoes like these, like the Romas, they're going to do better than the nice big slicers. Like these are called Cherokee Plum, I think. And they're a really nice salady tomato. And these too, I mean, they're a little bit nicer tomato for salad, and they have a lot more liquid as opposed to a big Roma like that. But I use whatever I have, and it just cooks down longer, you know. So it's going to take longer to cook down juicier tomatoes, because these have like, they're just nice and solid inside. If you can get Romas, that's why they're better for sauce. That's why they're called paste tomatoes, probably because they make a really nice paste or sauce a lot quicker than one. Let's cut one of these open. Well, and those aren't super different, see? So I don't know. I don't get super picky about what I'm putting in my ketchup. It's just, okay, we have too many tomatoes, these are going in. But ketchup, once you get it started, it's just cooking on the back of the stove. It doesn't require any attention, except you definitely want to stir it every once in a while, because if you let it sit too long simmering and cooking, it'll cook down and it'll start to stick in the pan, and then you'll have a problem. So that's really the only attention you need to keep paying to this. You keep it on a low heat, and you're just going to come back and check it and make sure you're keeping it stirred. Not super often, but you know, every half hour probably. And I will say, even though you can see I'm working on a pulled out cutting board here that's wooden, I prefer to put this, I don't know what this is, that, you know, plastic, because it has this little ridge, kind of a dented line around the edge to catch the juice. And you can just take it to the sink and give it a quick rinse off, rather than worry about everything spilling off your wooden cutting board and getting all over the floor. So it looks like we're going to have, for this recipe, I'm going to have 2 of these 8-cup. So we're going to have 4 quarts total of chopped tomato to start with. I like to do this in a wide rather than deep stock pot, mostly because you're going to be cooking and simmering this down, and to me it feels like having a wider surface to be releasing steam. That's going to be better than a tall, deep stock pot, if that makes sense. Also, we are going to be using a lot of organic onion powder. And you could probably use freeze-dried onions, which I have, and just put them in now and let them kind of soak in and break down, but I'm going to use this. What I do is put all the tomatoes in a pot, and I just douse them with onion powder. Like, you know, I like a lot of onions, so I don't measure it. I probably have it in the recipe. If I do, I'll write it on the screen somewhere along the way once we get to ingredient quantities. Grab a spoon of some kind. So what I'm going to do is just stir these around a little bit over a medium heat, and this is the point where you don't want them to stick. So you want to keep an eye on them at this point quite a bit, just to keep them from sticking to the bottom of the pan as they're heating up. And we want to bring this first pot of just chopped tomatoes to a boil. And then once it comes to a boil, just bring it down to a simmer and keep an eye on it and simmer it for 20 minutes. So I'm going to get that going, and we'll see you back here in a little bit. And here you can see this is just at a simmer. We've got about 15 more minutes to go, and I'll just come along every now and then and just give it a stir to make sure it's not sticking in the pan. And then we will get this out of the pot and run it through a food mill. And while that is simmering, we've got that on the stove just kind of simmering down, and I've got measured here. We've got carob syrup, so corn syrup, which you don't have to use if you don't want to, white wine vinegar. This is so basic. Lemon juice, black pepper, mustard powder, salt, and brown sugar. And what I will say is when we have that run through the food mill and we dump all the ingredients in, I go light on the salt to start with. And even the sugar, it's kind of a range. You'll see on the screen the recipe has a range, you know, a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So start with the lower amount and start with a minimal amount of salt so that in the end, once it cooks down, you don't find that you've gotten the flavors too strong, too salty, too sweet. You can always add a little more sugar or a little more salt at the end once it's reduced all the way down. But you do not want to put too much in at the beginning and then reduce it down, because you'll just end up with a product that's like, wow, that's way too salty. So start with all of these things, but we're going to only add part of the sugar and part of the salt. I have just, because I have a shortage of pans today, I just took that off the stove and poured it into a big bowl and washed the same pan out, and I'm going to put it through the food mill back into the same pan on the stove. And this is really the only place where you're going to end up spending some time on this recipe, and the rest of it is just cook time. It's just going to be simmering down and simmering down and simmering down. Simmer down. Is anybody old enough to remember the Saturday Night Live thing where Donna Summer, Donna. Chime in if you remember that. I think it was Sherry O'Terry. Today's pop quiz will be about SNL. And if you have a food mill, you know how simple this is. You just push it through. And these are so great. If you don't have one of these, check the link in the... I have a link in the description. I use this during canning season all the time. And if you have little kids, like if you have babies, for baby food, if you want to make your own baby food, my mom used to do that. She used to take our regular dinner and just put it through a food mill and feed it to my brother. So whatever we were having, he basically got the same thing. It was just put through one of these. All right, I'll see you back here in a little bit. And as you can see here, this is what we're left with. And I didn't measure this, so I can't tell you how much sauce we got out of that. But I will say, stop right here and go wash the food mill. Do not wait, because you will be sorry if you do. So we're going to just go ahead and add all the corn syrup. And again, if you hate corn syrup, and I kind of do, this is like the only time I probably cook with corn syrup except at Christmas. And we're going to add all of the white wine vinegar and all of the lemon juice and all of the black pepper. And it's not a ton. All the mustard powder. And then to start with, this is probably maybe 2 plus tablespoons, a tablespoon and a half plus. I'm going to start with about that much of a tablespoon, and maybe even less. I'm just really sketchy about putting in too much salt, because boy, you're in trouble if you oversalt. So that was, you know, maybe 3/4 of a tablespoon. And this is, I don't know, maybe a half a cup. Again, I'll have to look at the recipe, but we're just going to add most of it, but not all. And if I need to make it sweeter at the end, I can. And this is where the waiting will take place. You just get everything combined in, and you're going to just cook this, simmer this down, and it's going to reduce by at least probably half or more. You want it thick, and I want it, you know, you can make it as thick as you want. If you like a saucier ketchup, or if you want more like a pasty ketchup, I like mine kind of somewhere in between. And it'll take, it's 1:30 right now. I'll be lucky if this is done by tonight. Usually I put it in the fridge and I'll literally heat it back up tomorrow and cook it down some more. So we'll see how long this takes. And then at the end is where you want to taste for your seasonings and add any more of the sugar or salt if you want. But you can pretty much trust that first batch of ingredients to be the right amount for what you're making. So I'm going to let that cook down for hours and hours and hours. And we'll see you back here when it's reduced. And this is much later that evening. You can see how thick this is. When you pull the spoon through it, it leaves a trail, which is kind of what I want to see. And you can see the original level right there. Look how much that reduced down. And that is going to be what I want to see for thickness. And I'll show you a little test you can also do for any kind of jams or preserves. I'll show you how you can tell if it's ready to put in jars. Because you can bottle this, and I will can it in pint jars in a water bath, which I'm not going to do on this video. But here you take a spoonful of the ketchup and take it over to a plate. I like a white plate just because it makes it easy to see. And what you're going to look for as that mounds up on the plate, you watch that little bit of liquid around the edge, and you're going to watch for that little bit, sort of a ring of liquid that leaks out from the mounded preserves. This will work for jam or ketchup. And I am going to bottle this the way it is, but if you were doing jam, you would probably put that back in and let it cook for a little bit longer. And there you have the beautiful pint that I got out of that 16 cups of tomatoes ready to go in the pantry. I hope this inspires you to try making your own ketchup at home. It is so worth it. Let us know in the comments what changes you make to the recipe to make it your own. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.